Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Yvette Smiley and this is Storytime with Yvette Smiley, Murder and Mystery. Today I am going to tell you about Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, dubbed the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer and sex offender whose crime spree took place in California between June 1984 and August 1985. Ramirez's childhood is considered an influence on his crimes. Frequently abused by his father, Ramirez began developing gruesome and macabre interest in his early and mid-teens from his older cousin, Miguel, who also taught him some of the military skills that he would go on to use during his year-long killing spree. Ramirez also cultivated a strong interest in Satanism and the occult. By the time he had left his home in Texas and moved to California at the age of 22, he had begun frequently using cocaine. Ramirez would often commit burglaries to support his drug addiction, many of which were later frequently accompanied by murders, rapes, attempted rapes, and assaults. On April 10, 1984, Ramirez murdered May, a 9-year-old Chinese-American girl, in the basement of his apartment. May was with her 8-year-old brother and looking for a lost $1 bill when Ramirez approached the girl and told her to follow him into the basement to find it. Once they were in the basement, Ramirez beat, strangled, and raped May before stabbing her to death with a switchblade, hanging her partially nude body from a pipe by her blouse. The killing was not linked to Ramirez until 2009, when his DNA was matched to a sample obtained at the crime. On June 28, 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vincow was found murdered in her apartment. She had been stabbed repeatedly in the head, neck, and chest while asleep in her bed. Her throat was slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. Ramirez's fingerprint was found on a mesh screen he removed to gain access through an open window. On March 17, 1985, Ramirez attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home, shooting her in the face with a .22 caliber handgun after she pulled into her garage. She survived the bullet when it ricocheted off the keys she held in her hands as she lifted them to protect herself. Hernandez played dead until Ramirez left the scene. Inside the house, her roommate Dale Yoshie, aged 34, heard the gunshots and ducked behind the counter when she saw Ramirez enter the kitchen. When she raised her head to get a look of what had happened, he shot Yoshie once in the forehead, killing her instantly. Within an hour of the home invasion, Ramirez pulled 30-year-old Veronica out of her car, shot her twice, and fled. She was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. On March 27, 1985, Ramirez entered a home that he had burglarized a year earlier at approximately 2 a.m. and killed the sleeping Vincent Charles, aged 64, with a gunshot to his head. Vincent's wife, Maxine, aged 44, was awakened by the gunshot, and Ramirez beat her and bound her hands while demanding to know where her valuables were. While he ransacked the room, Maxine escaped her bonds and retrieved a gunshot from under the bed, which she was unaware was not loaded. She pulled the trigger just after he turned around and saw her. The infuriated Ramirez shot her 3 times, killing her, then fetched a large carving knife from the kitchen. He mutilated her body by cutting an inverted cross into her chest, then removed her eyes with a knife and placed them in a jewelry box. He attempted to have sex with her body, but found himself so shaken by her attempting to shoot him that he was unable to achieve an erection. He took the jewelry box with her eyes when he left and kept it at his apartment as a souvenir until his arrest. On May 14, 1985, Ramirez entered the home of Bill Doi, aged 66, and his disabled wife Lillian, aged 56. Surprising Doi in his bedroom, Ramirez shot him in the face as Doi went for his own handgun. After beating the mortally wounded man into unconsciousness, Ramirez entered Lillian's bedroom, bound her, then raped her after he had ransacked the home for valuables. Bill Doi died of his injuries while in the hospital. On the night of May 29, 1985, Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia and stopped at the house of Mabel, aged 83, and her disabled sister, Florence, aged 81. Finding a hammer in the kitchen, he beat her and bound Florence in her bedroom, then bound and beat Mabel before using an electric cord to shock the woman. After raping Lang, he used Mabel's lipstick to draw the satanic pentagram symbol on her thigh, as well as on the walls of both bedrooms. The women were found 2 days later, alive but comatose and critically injured. Mabel later died of injuries in the hospital. The next day, Ramirez drove the same car to Burbank and sneaked into the home of Carol Kyle, aged 42. At gunpoint, he bound Kyle and her 11-year-old son with handcuffs, then ransacked the house. He released Carol to direct him to where the family's valuables were. He then raped her repeatedly. Ramirez also repeatedly ordered her not to look at him, telling her at one point that he would cut her eyes out. He fled the scene after retrieving the child from the closet and binding the two together again with handcuffs. Ramirez continued on his killing spree, attempted murder, attempted rape, and stealing from a dozen of other people until his arrest on August 30th, 1985. On September 20th, 1989, Ramirez was convicted of all 43 charges. 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. During the penalty phase of the trial on November 7th, 1989, he was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber. He stated to reporters after the death sentences, "Big deal, death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." The trial cost was $1.8 million, which at the time made it the most expensive murder trial in the history of California, until surpassed by the O.J. Simpson murder case in 1984. Ramirez died on June 7, 2013. He had been affected by chronic substance abuse and chronic hepatitis C viral infection. And that is the story of the Night Stalker. Thank you for your time. Please like, subscribe, and